Is that us? Okay, are we taking away? Hi, everybody. Aloha. I'm, again, Trisha Kēhaulani Watson-Sproat. I am the Vice President of the Board of ʻāina Momona. I'm going to introduce everybody real quick. Just a little bit about our nonprofit again. We're fairly young, but we include a lot of old-timers. So Uncle Walter Riddy, who I think most people know, was one of the original Koho'olawe Nine and has spent his life advocating for ʻāina and justice for Hawaiians. He was doing a lot of work for a lot of other people. And in 2017, we sat down in my living room. It seems like a lot happens in my living room. And I asked him, I said, Uncle, if you could do anything, what does something that you create for yourself look like? And he said, ʻāina Momona. And in my living room, on a piece of college-ruled folder paper that I ripped out of a binder, I said, okay, well, what does that look like? And he came up with 4 areas. So vai, ʻāina, ai, food, and ea, sovereignty. And that was where we started. I would have never, ever imagined that from my living room, we would be where we are as an organization today. But that is because we have recruited some of the most amazing people I know and have the joy of working with. First being Jane Au. So Jane, I have known since she was 11 years old. Her father is the tattoo master, Kavika Au, as you can tell from her beautiful tattoos. But I've known her since she was 11, her and her sisters, and she graduated with her master's in religion from the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and said, Kehau, what should I do? And I said, please come work for us. And thank God she did. She's been with us since pretty much the beginning. I could not be more proud of the extraordinary administrator she's become for our nonprofit. So she basically runs the nonprofit. She writes all our grants. Do not come rush her after, but she has evolved into, I think, one of the most amazing grant writers we could ever have for Alohui. She has helped to raise literally millions and millions of dollars for us to do the work that we do. So I love Jane so much. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to get through this without crying. Next, Alexa, put down your camera and stand up. No, okay, either, and if they can't see you. So if you follow us on Instagram, yes, you should clap for Alexa. I was gonna make you climb up here, but don't. When I ran the social media, when I started Instagram, I think we had 4 followers. We now have close to 70,000. That is Alexa. Do not rush her either, and you cannot have her. I'm serious. I will fight people. You cannot take her from us. But she has elevated our message and our reach to literally millions and millions of people. Again, I could have never imagined, but it is because of these young, amazing Hawaiian women that we are who we are today. Kalei Kanuha, who I've known since I was skinny and young, so a long time. It was a long time ago. I was older than 11, but barely, because I still had youthful metabolism. Has been one of my heroes and mentors, and if you don't know her, she is a professor of sociology and social work. Yes, absolutely. For decades, she has worked in domestic violence and trauma. She was a co-author of the 3rd Nanaʻike Kumu book, so her work is amazing. She was at the University of Hawaii for 20 years, and is now back doing incredible work at the University of Washington. She is one of our board members. Mahalo for being with us. So in case you don't know too much about ʻāina Momona, our board are entirely Native Hawaiian PhDs. That was on purpose, to show that we are people that can lead and take care of ourselves, and that we have extraordinary members of our lahui who have so much. So our board is in Hawaii and on the continent, an incredible people. I laugh and joke because, Lehu and I have also known each other forever, and I invited him to be here because he's such an amazing member of our lahui. Vice President of the Board of Water Supply right now?
Just board member.
Board member? Okay.
Yeah.
Aspiring to higher, greater things for, okay. Filmmaker, captain of the Hokulea, has been in Hawaiian activism since, well, the womb, maybe prior to that.
Gavohe's favorite line about me is that I used to protest outside his office when I was a kid.
Yes, okay, so we're just gonna go with that. He used to protest out governor's office when he was a kid, but now works closely with him. That's just how we are. So, and then just really quickly about the focus groups. So we are here because we are working with First Nations Development Institute to develop a report about Hawaiians in Hawaii and on the continent. So a lot of the reason we came was to have conversations with you folks. There will be a report that looks at how justice affects all our lives. So a lot of the conversations I've been hearing about needing funding, about needing support, what that looks like, we are going to address those things in the report that's coming out. I implore you to come. The mokeke is gonna stay open for us. You will get a gift card, but above all else, come because you're here and be in the room, right? For all of you, I'm assuming everybody saw Hamilton, be in the room where it happens. And that is your opportunity, and we came to hear from you, so please come share your mana'o. Okay, that's it for me. Jane, take it away.
Mahalo. Aloha, everybody. Mahalo nui for joining us today for our last big panel of the convention. Our topic is Too Much Aloha, Preserving Tradition and Embracing Innovation. And I want to start off by asking our panelists about the ways being known as a culture of aloha have worked against us. ʻāina Momona's founder and executive director, Uncle Walter Riddy, is like the first to say aloha is not a weakness, and we can't let aloha be interpreted as such. He's also the first to say aloha also means goodbye. But that's not historically how aloha is understood. How is our aloha taken advantage of today?
Go first.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, you know, we were talking in the prep for this about, you know, this idea of aloha and can you have too much? And I think first and foremost the answer is no. Like, aloha is the driving force of what and how we interact with each other and build pilina and certainly connect. And through the last several days, there's been this talk about the contribution that Hawaii can make to the rest of the world, and all of that is wrapped around aloha. And we also need the tools, the resources, and all of the other pieces of the puzzle to do things like aloha ʻāina. And over the course of time, we've given some of that away. Whether it's the jurisdiction in some cases, whether it's the actual resources, we can get to these places where we bump into this idea that, well, how do we aloha something if it has been degraded so far that meeting the level of excellence, like with what Keanu shared with us just a few minutes ago, meeting that is hard to do in some instances if we've given some of these things away. And I think that's like the core of what we're trying to talk about today. How we interact now in this place and space when our lahui leaves and when we're missing some of those pieces. And we'd like them back.
Well, I agree with that, right? I mean, and having spent so much time with Uncle Walter, I mean, to me, he always talks about aloha ʻāina, right? He talks about being taught by his kupuna, and never once in the decades I've worked with him has it ever been aloha's weakness, right? Aloha is strength. Aloha is the core of who we are. It is aloha ʻāina. And aloha transcends, right? I think we have seen that aloha can be global, absolutely. But I think when we look back on our kupuna and our kupuna from like when we first had contact, right, foreign contact, I think it was a very different and confusing time, right? We need to remember that the aloha we had for one another, that is organic to Hawaii, came out of necessity. We had to share with each other. We had to make room. Our survival, our thriving was dependent upon it. So I think that has evolved. And I think the conversation we need to be having is, what does aloha look like in a world that doesn't always have aloha? Right? I think that's what's hurt us. And you said something really amazing, so I'm going to kick it to you in a second. It's about our identity, right? So how in a world that has constantly swooped in to dilute every aspect of Native Hawaiian identity, how do we not only keep, but continue to control what aloha means?
Well, first of all, it's such an honor to be here with all of you and with dear friends. And, you know, when I think about the idea, well, it's not the idea, but the concept of aloha, to me, aloha is about essence. And, you know, one of the things that Auntie Malia and Auntie Lynette, Uncle Likeke, and many of our kupuna have talked about is the notion that as Hawaiians, we have an essence, and the essence is aloha. And I think that's what you're saying, right? It's like, is there a way, or is there a structure, or the, how our cultures, and I don't only mean in Hawaii or about Hawaiians, but is there a way that things have evolved so that we have, I don't think we've lost that essence, but it's dulled. It's dulled and it's lost a little bit inside of us. And so to me, I think that's why I call it about identity, because it's how you know yourself so that you can be in relationship in Pilina with not only other Hawaiians, but with others who are not Hawaiian. And the thing I wanted to close with for now is that, you know, people have always said to me, like, how come you only concerned about, Hawaiians and Hawaiian things and Hawaiian culture? And I always say, you know, and I really believe this, whatever all of us do about who we are and what it means to be Hawaiian, if it's good for Hawaiians, it's going to be good for everybody else. That's why we do this.
If I could just add to Kehau's comment about aloha being, you know, in some sort of conflict, or that there are other views of like how we should treat each other, you know, it should be noted too that, in my view, aloha is like 180 degrees on the opposite side of like the definition of capitalism, right? In aloha, we show aloha by being able to share and give what we have. And the definition of capitalism is to create more wealth for yourself, to create more wealth. And those two things really come into conflict for some of us every day when we're trying to navigate how it is that we show aloha and still operate with a new system of expectations for us as business owners, as nonprofit runners, as folks who are trying to do the good work in the community, but still having these conflict of these views of like what success is. And that's one of the things that I've had to struggle with as a business owner, but I think it's one of the most important parts that we still are staking our claim that, no, the aloha part is the most important part, and we still got to make it go, though.
And I think that's evolved, right? I mean, I think a lot over not only since when we were struggling through, you know, the monarchy era to fight against foreign forces, but even in the last 10 or 20 years. I think what I really I don't run our social media in any way, shape, or form. It's why it's successful, because I don't touch it at all. But what I have loved so much about the messaging being developed by Alexa, by Jane, by her sister Julie, by our comms team, by these young Hawaiians, was they do lots of posts about telling Kanaka, like, you are enough. Whatever Hawaiian you have, wherever you are, that is enough. And that wasn't something we always had, right? I think for so long we've operated from fear, we've operated from insecurity, we have not known who we were supposed to be in this evolving world, right? We sort of take this defensive spot and try to figure out our place in it. And I think we have hit this point where it's like, F that. I know who I am. I know what being Hawaiian means to me. I am enough, right? I am not going to ever tell some other Hawaiian they're not Hawaiian enough. It's, whoever you are, as long as you are grounded in culture. And I think if we operate from that place of confidence in our identity, confidence in knowing who our kupuna were, just this place of, aloha is the word, right? Like this sort of love of self and community and the world around us, I think we're going to be infinitely more powerful, because I think positivity and sort of just affirmation and believing in ourselves is so much the key to what we can do for the world, because you do such amazing work with so many people who are hurt and have been traumatized. And, Josiah Kau, who's here, and if you haven't met him, he's amazing, does work with incarcerated youth. I feel like that's such a key to healing ourselves.
Well, one of the things I want to say is I'm a social worker by training, but I probably was a social worker before I even knew what that was, because my tutu lived with us and just exuded always love for everybody. And, she was one of those kupuna who weren't crabby, she was actually kind of nice. We have that thing, right? We say, the kupuna, they're all nice, they're not all nice. But, some are kind of crabby, they have hard lives, yeah? But my grandma was just so kind all the time. And, the place that I am right now as somebody who works in the area of trauma, behavioral health, there's a lot of problems around mental health, around drug use, and drug use related to medicating mental health challenges, yeah? So all these things are all related, and at the bottom of it for me is about capitalism and colonialism. And those two C's are just very, very, very bad for our health, those two things, So one of the things I've decided is I'm not going to talk about all the bad things. I'm not going to talk about all the trauma we have and the lost identities and all of the bad things. More of us are in prison, and we die of cancer because we don't get help. We have heart disease, diabetes. All those bad things is like, I'm just not going to talk about those things anymore. What I want to focus on is that the key to I believe this so much because I'm in the area of behavioral health and mental health and trauma. But what I think the key to healing, and actually the key to prevention, is going back to our culture. I really believe we just have to go back there. And when we go back to our culture, that will be, the thing they call the protective factors and all that stuff. The protective factors are really about claiming our identities as Hawaiians. And that means however and whatever your ancestral practices are, that is what we have to go back to. And that's about identity and about aloha. Yeah? So that's going to heal us, not medicine and all those other things. You gotta have aloha inside yourself and in your relationships. And I just want to focus on that and not on all the bad things.
Mahalo. John DeFries in his keynote speech yesterday showed us those images of Waikiki and discussed how in his lifetime so much of his home, his entire neighborhood was completely lost to him, completely disappeared. As a young Oiwi who's only known Waikiki as this crazy tourist city hub, it really struck me how quickly it is possible for us to lose these spaces. So I'm thinking, when the wahipana and the natural resources that are at the core of who we are, at the core of Aloha ʻāina, are lost to us, how does that change the Aloha spirit? What does being Hawaiian today look like when we're losing the spaces that define us?
So that's a phenomenal question. And it was, so as somebody who's also lineal and ancestrally from Waikiki, he's absolutely right. My family had, as did many, many Hawaiian families, had ʻāina in Waikiki. All of Lulililo Trust used to be, all that land was in a trust, and it was effectively stolen during the territorial era. So it is deeply traumatizing and hurtful. And I think I spent a lot of time also thinking about what my family lost and what other families lost. But I also think about, and I do think we have to figure out how to move forward from that, right? Like, I don't think we can sit in the trauma of the past forever. I think we have to acknowledge it, deal with it, figure out reparations for it. But I think we can't stay there. I think it's very, very unhealthy for us individually and collectively to stay in that hurtful place. But I also think about Uncle Walter, right? That man has literally, hypothetically, cut water lines and cut down trees. Hypothetically, the man's alive, he's fine. This is not anything, mission of anything. To protect Molokai and to keep Molokai Molokai. So I think, I think it has to be both, right? For the things we have lost, we have to figure out how to fix what we can and what that looks like. So that's a very real active thing. But at the same time, we talked about yesterday in the panel, what is the role of Kanaka on the continent? And I think it is in those fights, right? Where we do have spaces and resources that we can still protect and preserve, we absolutely must. But because we can't lose everything. I think we have to find a way to move forward, but I think we have to be very, very cautious to protect with our lives what we have left.
Okay, and the assault on our natural resources just keeps ratcheting up, right? And what's so interesting to me, right? When I have a different discussion in audience about voyaging, and we talk about the canoe and what the time space was like when Western contact, first came upon Hawaii, and we talk about the abundance that was there, and then where we are now, where there's a container ship parked every 36 hours at Honolulu Harbor to provide us the resources that we had in abundance just a couple hundred years ago. What that means to me is we're talking about the choices we make with the resources we have, right? Do we want to put hundreds of millions of jet fuel 100 feet above the aquifer because that's a good storage place, but what happens when you leak a few thousand gallons into the aquifer, and what does that mean for the trajectory of where we are and how we can persist as people, as Kanaka in our homeland, right? And that story is like unfolding as we go, right? And the choices that we make about how fiercely we protect Vai into the future is going to be tested. It's going to be tested because the values that others may have of what clean water is not our values, right? Clean water in the definition for the Department of Health is so many parts per billion and below. And so there can be some oil in the water, it's okay, but we have to advocate for what we believe is okay or not okay with the resources that are available to us. And that onslaught of choices that we have to make as a community just keeps ratcheting up, meaning the choices we have to make come faster. Sometimes there's not as much resource to deal with it. I'm talking about climate resiliency, I'm talking about adaptation. And sometimes if we don't make a decision, it gets made for us. Policymakers tell us where we can build our homes on land that our kupuna are buried on. So what that means is that we all have a voice in that, and we have to have the kind of stance that our kupuna did 200 and 300 and 400 years ago in all the different ways that they could ku'e. That the ku'e part of the aloha still has to persist, and we still have to keep going.
No, absolutely. And what's interesting to me, something I think I've realized being here the last couple of days, I'm really glad we came. you know, we talk a lot back home. I mean, you and I are very good friends, so we chat a lot. But, you know, we talk in Hawaii about how far DC is from us, right? That's, I think, something we really, really struggle with back home. It feels like an entire world away. But we have all these Hawaiians here today, all of you here today. It's not that far for you, right? Like, we shouldn't have to constantly struggle to take that message to ZC because we have all these Hawaiians in the Midwest. It's a train ride for you. It's like, you know, I mean, like for us, I feel like we're taking like steamboats half the time. Like I feel like we're on that journey back in the, you know, 19th century where it just takes forever and it takes a toll on us. But to me, right, that's the power of this convention potentially, is how do we, you know, if people say we want to be part of the lohu, we want to be connected, the potential for you to help carry those messages to seats of power that have been colonizers and the source of capitalism, like that's potentially something very powerful that I feel like the people here can engage in actively.
Yeah. You know, and I think the notion of aloha is about ohana and about collectivity. So I think that's what you're talking about, which is that no matter where you are, you have to remember who you are. And who you are is Hawaiian. Doesn't matter if you live in Boston or Seattle or Hawaii. And so you have to be connected to something more than yourselves. And I think that's the part that's really hard. And what I love about the OPO being here and all the work that the next generation is going to do is that for me, what I think has been really helpful is to remember, you know, past, present, future. I'm here because my kupuna paved the way and created a space for me to be here. I'm here because I'm with wonderful people who are fighting the good fight. But every day, it's not about us. It's about the generations ahead who will not know us, but will know of us because we fought for a world and for ʻāina that was better than it is for us. So if you cannot fight for yourself, please fight for the generations ahead because they will know you for what you've left for them. And you could leave nothing. You could leave destruction. You could leave behind ʻāina that is not accessible to them anymore. Or you could leave clean water. And you could leave a legacy that will make them proud to be Hawaiian. Prouder than even us can be or could be. So always, it's not about us, you know. It's about all the generations ahead. So fight for them, please. And together, fight together for them.
Mahalo. You guys all, this wasn't one of our predetermined questions, but just sitting up here thinking, you guys all touched on protecting our resources and even protecting them with our lives. And I feel like in non-Hawaiian media and when it comes to non-Hawaiians depicting the aloha spirit, they don't show us at Mauna Kea. They don't show us chained to the cattle guard. They don't show us marching to protect our ʻāina and our resources. They don't show us laying down our lives at Haleakala or Kaho'olawe. It's our people in like positions of servitude, giving lei to tourists when they come off the plane. Given who we actually are as a people, what is the aloha spirit to you? What's the real aloha spirit for our community?
It's aloha ʻāina to me, right? It's patriotism. It's pride. You know, I think you're absolutely correct, right? That has been sort of how we've been depicted, and I think that's convenient for the rest of the world, right? We are friendly natives. We are happy to come bring you your, you know, weird orchid lei when you step off the airplane. But again, I see, kind of like I said on the panel, we have so many Hawaiians in positions of power right now, right? Daniel and Kalani, right? Stepping in at HTA, Micah at HCF. Countless examples, right? Venus is at Kahimohala. Jamie just took over, you know. That's to me amazing, right? And to me, that's aloha, right? That striving for excellence, that constant strive for excellence that is inspiring and shared and fierce and amazing. I look at Keanu, and I'm like, these kids are so much better than I am, right? Like, they're grounding in their culture. I'm of her father's generation, so to me, aloha it's in our future. And the aloha spirit is, again, not weakness, right? We can be loving, and I think we are, and we must hold on to that, but cross us and we will punch you in the face, right? I mean, so I think it has to be that. I think that has to be the message. I am here for whatever you need. I will love you, and I will be generous with you, and I will teach you. But screw me over, and you will feel the wrath of us all. And that's, to me, how our kupuna were, right? It must be loving and fierce at the same time. And that's complicated, but it's also necessary.
Yeah. She's threatened to punch me in the face many times. I want to answer your question through just a little more articulation of Keanu's speech just a few minutes ago. In this room, in this very room right now, there's the guy who was sorely outnumbered at the 1978 Constitutional Convention and somehow found his way to make Hawaiian language the official state language alongside English, the first in the nation to ever have done that. And the implications that come from that are in this room. Because then the nonprofit that popped out of that to go and teach our keiki, right? One of the earliest employees of that nonprofit is in this room, right? Who has been advocating for 40 years, right? They had to go and rewrite the law because it was still illegal to teach the keiki ʻōlelo Hawaii in the classroom. She's in this room, right? And over the course of that whole story, you have this young woman come up on stage. Did you guys notice? Her language of comfort is ʻōlelo Hawaii. Right? How about a round of applause, right? Right? Because she gets up to the podium and addresses us in Hawaiian, and all of the pieces of what it is to be Hawaiian glow. You can feel it. It reverberates out. And then for the transactional language at which we persist, she switches in and she's like, oh, not as confident, right? And then when she closes, all in Hawaiian, she is unapologetic about who knows what she's saying or not, because it doesn't matter, because everything she said is exuding out of her and you can feel what she means. That is so important to understand, that over the course of just a few decades, we can turn the ship if we choose to, right? That's aloha.
Sorry, that made me cry. Speaking of the next generation, and speaking of the need to preserve tradition, but also innovate, it feels like the world we live in is just getting more and more complicated every single day. In this messy modern world, how do we balance tradition and innovation? And given that we're here together in this space, how do we do that together?
I'm not sure if what I'm going to say is answer the question, so feel free to, one of you can just scold me if I'm not answering the question. So it's interesting, right? I mean, we're here, and I've not been checking my phone that much, but what I saw, I was checking Facebook last night, and I guess OHA CEO Sylvia Hussey made a recommendation to the board yesterday to start giving grants to Hawaiians on the continent. And I meant what I said yesterday. I absolutely think we should. When it comes to culture and other things, I absolutely should. But people back home are losing it, right? I'm like just flooded, we can't, we have to keep money home. And I sort of looked at it, and I sort of sighed, and I said, I don't agree with that. And I kind of put it away, and then there's some sort of stuff where I see other people who, Hawaiians on the continent, just other people kind of nomo about other stuff, and I looked at that, and I kind of sighed, and I put it away. And I think sometimes, we think about taking on so much, right? How do we fix everything? Then I thought to myself, I said, you know what, F it, we're here. We're here in Vegas. We're the people that showed up, right? I don't need to solve everything. I don't need to deal with every Hawaiian. But I am happy to work with the people who show up to do the work.
Yeah.
So to me, right, when you say, how do we do this together? I'm not going to worry about 500,000 Hawaiians. I'm going to worry about you and my relationship with you and my relationship with you and my relationship with all of you, because we showed up. So to me, figuring out, tradition, we have the most amazing practitioners, and they are advocates. And I've always said, I am not a practitioner person, but I am happy to kako'o them. I'm a good admin person. I cannot do pretty much anything else. I'm useless with everything else. But I have a role, right? My role is to support Keanu's dad, right? These people who have been unbelievably steadfast, inspiring, amazing practitioners who have held things down when they were a lot darker than things are today. Right? Keanu is possible because they fought when it was darkest. And that's, right? So my role is to back them up. I think innovation can be a way where we connect, right? Thank God for Google Docs, right? That's how we all talk to each other now, right? We're writing our report, Google Docs. So I think everything has a role, but to me, how do we come together? Kuhio Lewis, I'm looking at you, Joe. I'm telling you right now, we need to have this again next year. This cannot be the one, this just needs to be the first.
Well, I think of innovation in our situation for us and our people and our future is, the movie Back to the Future? You got to be kind of old if you know that movie, but I am for sure the oldest one.
I saw the theater.
Yeah, it was movie theater time. Now you can get them on Amazon and everything. But to me, innovation is back to the future, and this is about however our cultural and ancestral practices are to be for this day and this year and the generations ahead. It won't be the same as it was. It will innovate. It'll look a little bit more hybrid. It'll be something kind of different. Look, we're meeting in Vegas. Come on, right? So the fact is, we would not have a hui in a place like this, in a big old ballroom with this kind of glassy lights and TV and all like that, yeah? But it's a way for us to connect. So to me, what innovation is to preserve what is most important about aloha, which is pilina. It's to be in relationship with each other in the best way that we can. And so it means back to the future, going back into our ancestral practices and moving those forward in the best way we can. But it also means that we have to be very, very vigilant and very careful. Don't go too fast, because that is kind of the modern, and I don't mean to be offensive, but it's kind of white people's way. Go really fast, talk fast, move fast, drive fast, make inventions fast, and we just have to be so vigilant and go slow, think hard, think together, try to have a more collective and reflective way of always thinking now, what is this going to look like a generation ahead for the keiki and people who are coming up? And we're going to be too old to know what we did, but we don't want to look back and say, oh, we should have waited one more year before we did that thing. We do have time, and it's balancing moving as in the best way we can, but also being thoughtful and reflective and caring, and really intoning in ourselves what our kupuna wanted for us as a people and as our future, right? We're here because our kupuna made this possible for us to be here. And I think, you know, I feel the same way about the language, because, you know, I was around when we were first starting out, you know, Punana. And to think that we have all these generations of young people who can speak fluently the language. It's so beautiful. You know, so that happened actually fairly quickly, that we have a generation who can speak more fluently in our native language. But that's an example of something that I don't think any of us could have imagined would be possible. But it happened. So that's, to me, that's back to the future, that you can actually have a generation who can speak our native language again. And that's what I hope we will do. That was a very futuristic thing, to think that we could have, you know, Hawaiian language not only part of our Constitution, that I don't exactly like our Constitution, but
that was a good piece, though.
Yeah, right. But that it was about fighting for something that we felt was really important. You know, you don't have your language, you don't have your culture, and now we can have these practices because our language is alive again. And I thank everybody who's worked so hard to make that possible.
Can I ask the lighting tech to just bring up a little bit of the house lights, so we can see
Such
everybody.
a director, producer. Look at that.
Yeah,
Just-
see.
Oh my God. Wait, hold on. Kui, how much time we have left?
Okay.
Last,
yeah. So to the innovation point, like I think this is a really interesting thing, right?
They didn't tell us how much time
It's
we
like
have.
by
We just came up
show
here
of
just to
hands, by show of hands, how many of you have in the last 2.5 years done some cultural practice on Zoom? Raise your hand. Okay, that's innovation. When we're talking about how we stay connected, right? I mean, you know, when I used to run OEV TV, I would run around telling people, like, this is the most powerful storytelling tool on the planet. Like, whole revolutions were started because somebody had a phone in their hand that they could record something happening that would shift. George Floyd, right? Shift the whole movement across the country, right? We have access to these tools, but it only works when we fill it in with the i'o, with the actual stuff that is what makes us us. And so I guess what I would leave you all with is that it's a careful balance. It's a careful balance, that we can't just fill in the innovation in a hollow way. We have to fill it in with the mana of the ike of our kupuna. Thank you.
If anybody has closing remarks, since we're out of time.
Nui ko o mahalo ia o ko pakahia pau no ke mau manawa a kako e hui ai. Mahalo nui.
Keep aloha, keep fighting, look to the future. Mahalo.
I'm going to just echo what comes from our far smarter, amazing youth. You are all enough. And I mahalo all of you, sincerely, for showing up. Mine is not so much a comment, but it's a commitment. I have heard, all of you Kanaka who are on the continent, I have heard what you have said. And as an Oahu Honolulu Hawaiian, I promise to go home and talk to other Hawaiians there about supporting you better. I want that for you folks. I want us to be one community. I simply ask the same of all of you. Let us go back to our places and advocate for each other and coming together to the people in our circles. Because I will fight like hell for you. Know that. Because you are Hawaiian, because you are Ohana, to us, we will fight for you. We hear you, we see you. And you are so much more than enough for our community. And thank you for being here. And I promise we will see you all here again next year. Mahalo.